What is life? Why am I here? How is it all connected? And how am I going to navigate this beautiful but crazy journey? I'm Sylvia and welcome to the Soul Sunshine podcast. Today I'm talking to Brock Bowen. Brock calls himself a wizard entrepreneur who is passionate about helping others to create magic in their lives. He is a free spirit who wants to live an adventurous and fulfilling life. Brock is a loving partner, father to 2 little boys, and overall a very inspiring and incredible human. Welcome to the Soul Sunshine podcast, Brock. It's so good to have you here today.
Yeah, of course. It's good to be here. I love it. I love that you got to see my family just before. I love that we got to connect, obviously, through Peter Dowson. And yeah, thanks for having me on.
It's been amazing to see your little boy just then. I love babies, so always welcome. Just not during the recording, So, Brocky, today we are talking about how to live life in flow and to create our own magic. We are talking about Brock's life and his journey, how he learned to be in flow and manifest all the things in his life that are important to him. We are talking about what potentially can hold us back from living our own dreams and what you can do to start creating your own magic. So that's a very, very exciting episode that I'm really looking forward to. And Brock, just to go back first, we met, I think it was about 8 years ago, I figured out. We met through our friend Pete, who connected us back in the day. And this is a big shout out to Pete as well, because it was his birthday the other day. And this is his belated birthday episode that he's been wanting to hear and asked for as well. So happy birthday, Pete, again, from Brocky and myself. And yeah, I think we met at Hub originally, but then we did visit you and Christy up in Cairns when you guys lived up there, and we stayed with you guys while we were shooting some stories up in the Great Barrier Reef. And yeah, I've just got really awesome memories of adventuring the Cairns hinterland with you and jumping off in waterfalls and swimming in rock pools. I had about 1 million mosquito bites, but hey, yeah, it was just awesome fun.
Yeah, we would have met at the Hub.
Yeah.
You guys would have all been sitting there on your MacBooks, doing your work, doing your thing, and then coming up to Cairns, obviously getting on a project. I loved that house. I mean, when I think of that house, I just think of magic. The people that flowed through there, all the different experiences we had. And then, waterfalls for me is such a big thing. Taking people out, getting them that crisp, nature experience, getting them in the waterfall, doing things that they don't normally do. And apologies for the mosquitoes. Haven't worked that one out yet. But
no, it's good. But it's funny when you say waterfalls, because for me it's the same. And I mean, even though we live at the ocean, and it's beautiful, obviously amazing to live at the ocean. But every time I go somewhere and there is natural springs, the natural creek, also when you're up in the Bellingen area, or anywhere in the Byron area, it just feels so rejuvenating jumping into that ice cold water. And you literally feel like you're getting out of it and you're being reborn after having a swim in there, and you're getting everything washed away and you just feel like anything's possible after that.
Yeah, it definitely does something. I don't know exactly all the elements, but I know when I sit under a waterfall, it just gets me out of my head. And if I get in the cold water, I do it every day, pretty much. I've got an ice bath at home now. So yeah, I didn't show you that off camera before, but I got the ice bath, the sauna, all that sort of stuff. So this morning I did it, had my coffee, I hung out with the family, did a few things before, and then the sauna, and I did a cold shower, but I'll do an ice bath later. So I'm trying to, in my day-to-day, I'm trying to simulate a lot of those experiences so I can just get it in a rapid amount of time. But nothing quite beats the waterfall.
Yeah. I've seen you doing the ice baths. That's quite intense. I don't know.
If you come to my house now, yeah, you got to get in the ice bath, pretty much.
It's compulsory, is it? It's like You can only enter after you've been in the ice bath.
It's just nice because a lot of people are so afraid of it that they just don't want to get in the tank. But yeah, it definitely is liberating to throw yourself and put yourself in an experience you definitely don't want to do.
When you're saying ice bath, I'm thinking about when I was pregnant and my fingers were really swollen towards the end and I needed to get my engagement ring off because my chiropractor was like, if you don't take that off, you're going to have to cut it off, because it was just... And so I made myself this ice bowl of water to obviously cool down my hand and put the hand in. And it was painful though. I'm like, it was painful to just put my hand in there. How am I supposed to put my whole body in there? But yeah, it would be an experience to try out at some point.
Yeah, if you come to my house, you'll be doing an ice bath, 100%.
Yeah.
I'll get you in,
time.
for sure.
I mean, I'm signing up for it. So, Brock, when I think about you, I honestly think about you as the personification of living life in flow and creating your own magic, I guess. Ever since I've known you, everything just seemed very easy for you and things just kind of flow in and out. You're going with it, you're also taking things that are potentially not working the way you were hoping that they were going to work in a very positive way. And you're like, well, how does it get any better than that? If something doesn't work. So tell me a little bit about, I guess, was it always like that for you? Like, was it always so easy? Tell me a little bit about growing up and starting to tap into that.
Honestly, when I answer that question, what I think about is how much of that inner struggle can we go through, that inner work, so we can actually, in the world, actually be in flow, actually be in the magic. It's a daily process. I always think about certain chapters in my life, as a young boy, I would catch the bus home from school and you had to do a lot of homework. And my idea was I just get it done on the bus. Because if you got it done on the bus, then you get home and you can play. And I always think about that, like if I'm working or I'm on a project or whatever I happen to be doing, I'm always trying to maximize everything. And then, I'll get to it later, but it's harder with a family. I really want to talk about that later, like how to be in flow as a family, because that's probably been the best thing and the biggest challenge in my life to date. I'm welcoming more challenges and being bigger. I've had chapters in my life where life is super easy, and I've had chapters in my life where it's so hard. But, I just think about if you're willing to face those fears and actually go for things, it just makes life so much better. Big experience for me, though. I really want to talk about this, and just to make sure that I do remember it, because I'm going quite on a tangent here, but I just think about pivotal moments. It links back to Peter Dowson. It links back to kind of a spiritual awakening or some description of that, where I just felt like the universe opened up a whole lot more to me. I was actually right near where Peter lives when he lived as a boy. You know how you go down to the south coast past Wollongong. I don't really remember the name of the suburb right now. What's it called? Do you remember it?
Where Pete lives, Stanwell.
You know where his parents live?
Park?
Stanwell Tops or
Stanwell
Park or something?
Yeah.
Peter can correct it for us, but essentially I was at a men's event there. And I just remember just seeing how all these men do life. Like, it was just at the time I was vegetarian. I'm hanging out with about 300 or 400 men at a men's event. And I just remember doing things different. I don't know why I do things different. I just remember all the guys are at a men's event. There's 300 or 400 of them. They're all away from their wives, so they're just eating whatever they want because there's no control on what they have to do, because their wife's not, saying, don't eat that, eat your greens, kind of like their mum. And they're all using the men's toilet, and they were disgusting. Imagine you got 300 or 400 men all using the same toilet, so I use the other ones. I'm like, there's 300 or 400 men here, people, and they were so in that context of what the rules are that whole event they used the men's toilet. And I was the one person, because there's no women there. I was the one person using the women's toilet. I remember just sitting there with myself going, have I always thought a little bit different? And then at that event was magical, because there was a particular time where they asked us to go and sit in prayer and meditation. And I don't know if I call it source or God or consciousness, but I heard the words, I love you, very, very distinctly. And then, for about 30 minutes, I was just tears of thankfulness, tears of something. And then I went to my actual dad, because he was there too. And he just put his hand on my chest and went, I love you. I remember softening into that. Because there's certain chapters I feel like as a dad it's changed for me. I feel like as a younger man, where you're like, I got to make my way in the world. I got to be strong. I got to be all these things. And you soften a little bit and you've got so much more power. And that's what I'm trying to welcome more and more, even where I am right now. Like that, from a 20-year-old something man to 30s to 40s, Just imagine this morning myself at 80, what I'd be like. I was chatting to Christy about that. And at that experience, then Dad goes, I love you, touch me. And then I just knew I had to go for a walk. I had that instinct. I had that inner knowing I needed to go for a walk. And I ended up jumping over the fence of this particular resort retreat that's right near the accommodation where I was at. And I saw this pool, and I stripped off, I jumped in, I was just looking at all the elements. I was like, just so connected. It just felt like I embodied something greater. And then I walked to the edge of this cliff just there just to have a look over. It's just this particular area. And I didn't find out this till many years later, but that's actually where Peter Dowson's brother fell. Which is like, it's crazy. They don't actually know what happened. If you fell, what happened, But I just had an eerie feeling when I was there. And then years later, I met Peter.
Oh, you
I
didn't
didn't realize
even
it.
know him then. Yeah.
Didn't even know him at that point. And the concept I've come up with now, it's called the dream team. Like there's all these people that get called into our existence for whatever reason. And I don't try and overthink it. You know, a lot of people when they're doing life, they're always, you know, say you think about a podcast, you go, oh, how much reach do these people have? What's going on? I want to quantify everything analytical. My thing is if I love it and it's actually, you know, something I want to do, if it's light and it feels delicious, then I'm happy to do it. And it doesn't mean everything in my life's that way. Other things take work. There's grunt. There's all these, you know, grit and things that you got to get through. But I didn't meet Peter till years later. I just found it crazy that was an experience that he used to go to that particular place. And apparently it used to be a sacred birthing pool. And then just having that feeling at the edge of the cliff. And then years later, Peter Dowson turned up in my life. And I always feel like with him and I, we kind of communicate intuitively or something. There's like this Jedi mind connection, you know, the universal mind connection. And I really want to talk more about that too, because the people in your life, the people that you surround yourself with, you know, having people that are going to appreciate you, but also the people going to challenge you. It's one thing I love with Christy. Christy just doesn't care. You know, if I go away on a trip and I'm doing amazing stuff, I come back to her and she goes, hey, have you done the dishes? Put your stuff away. Like, it's so nice just to try and keep it real, you know, just to think about, how that eventuates. So just on the original question going, you know, it wasn't always that way. And then it was always that way. Because it seems like life flips. All of a sudden you're so out of flow that it's just everything seems impossible. And then all of a sudden possibility comes back. You're like, whoa. And that fascinates me, how it can seem so effortless at one particular moment and then so challenging. And then not to get caught up in emotions, not to get caught up in stories, not to get caught up in anything else. Like you said earlier, ask a question like, how does it get any better than this? Or what else is possible? Or, you know, what's right about this I'm not getting? Because for some reason I'm being guided to something different because every time I'm going this direction, I keep hitting roadblocks. And yeah, it's an interesting game for sure.
So does that mean it's still hard for you sometimes? Or do you find yourself in a space now where it is becoming increasingly easy to do that, you know, and to not get caught up in other stuff?
Yeah, better and better. Always a work in progress. You know, the ice baths and the sauna, like I mentioned, they're really, really helping. Having space, I just don't think we acknowledge that enough. Like defining what space means to you, quantifying that and actually making a demand for it. Because for me, waterfalls create space for me. You know, an hour or two a day in nature creates space for me. Doing heavy workouts. Like I'm a fit guy. I love being fit. Just, you know, climbing trees, throwing kettlebells, all that sort of stuff. Mountain biking. That gives me energy. I like to surf, but I just don't get energy from it for some reason. It's hard. I like the challenge of it, but, you know, all my friends are all surfers because that gets you in flow. Whereas for me, it doesn't. I want it to. I'm like just trying it to, but it just doesn't get me in that flow state. So I'm always, you know, what other things are going to nurture me to be more of me?
That's interesting because it's whatever works for you doesn't necessarily need to work for somebody else, right? And it's about everybody finding their own little things that brings them back into their body and that brings them back into their intuition and into their flow state, so to speak. But what are some of the things that you would say that have helped you over the years? You know, you've talked about the ice baths, maybe a little bit extreme, you know, for some people. What are some of the things that you think would help people? Because it's also, is it a question of people not being connected to themselves? Have people forgotten how to really connect to their inner being and to their true self? And then how can we reconnect to that, you know, in order to live in a state of more ease, so to speak?
Yeah, for sure. I love just starting the day powerfully and ending the day powerfully. There are a couple of practices that I really focus on. And for a while there, it was 2 hours of meditation in the morning, 2 hours of meditation at night, which sounds ridiculous. 4 hours of meditation a day when most people don't have 10 minutes. And I just had to do it. And they always say, if you don't have time to meditate, you know that old saying?
Yeah, I do know that.
You need to meditate.
Well, it says meditate for an hour a day. And if you don't have time, meditate for 2.
Yeah, it's so true, right? Just trying to incorporate all those different things. I've had different things where I do throughout my life, but at the moment it's kind of floating in bed in the morning, doing some breath work. So either a combination of slow breathing or Wim Hof breathing. Just in case guys don't know who that is, it's a guy that's got a lot of world records. And even in the current world state, He's said straight out he's happy to get injected if they can find the COVID virus. He's happy to get injected with it and he'd be fine. I mean, that's powerful to be that confident in your abilities in the world because of what you do and who you are and what you are. But that's, breath work while I'm in that slippery state in the morning too, just right before I get out of bed. Let's just go there for a second because it's kind of nice to get in that slippery space. Guys, just go where you wake up. You're just kind of connecting. You're starting to feel that energy. You're just awake. Before the mind chatters turns on, before your phone turns on, before you've got to get into your to-do list or all that stuff, before you got to get up and go to the loo, all those things you got to do, that mind can be so slippery. And I'm just doing it these days, going everything I was up until now, I let it go. Blank canvas, brand new.
So you pretty much try to create yourself completely from scratch every day.
Trying to be fresh, trying to let go of the limitations of the past or the future. Because say for most of us, we're trying to perceive who we're going to be in the future and create from that, and then it just limits us. It's such an interesting one to do. And if before we even get out of the bed in the morning, if we've got particular choices, ideally you've got them written down somewhere, but you can choose the end result of what you want to create. You've just seen the property we've had, and that's been a big choice for a while. In regards to choice, today's Tuesday, so I'm always trying to give myself a reminder every week of all the things I want to do. With regards to that practice before I even get out of bed in the morning, that I feel is the most important thing. Just waking up. When we're all asleep, we're just connected. We're not overthinking things. We're just relaxed. We're asleep. We wake up in that certain brainwave in the morning before the mind switches on and we can start making choices. I just find that practical, just to actually go, well, who do I want to choose to be? And at the simplest level, for me, it's I choose to be all of me and so much more. I've been doing it every now and then where I lie on the couch in just this real slippery state. I start to ask myself questions, what kind of life do I actually want? What qualities do I want my life to have? Am I actually choosing based on what I desire and what my family wants, or am I still having other people's limitations in my world, in my reality? And that's what I'm trying to consider from. And that's been different over the last 4.5 years since Taj came. I was this Peter Pan character just doing whatever I wanted, not worrying about the past or the future, just going boom, 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 boom. And now, I got a squad. Now I got a squad to play with and it's great. But then, talking about flow, it's all about focus. And then all of a sudden you got, 2 little dudes now distracting. So I've had to come up with a whole new process about how I define myself, how I show up, how I play in things. And it's cool. But I think it's so easy to make excuses because the kids, I just see them as an extra battery. That's how I'm trying to perceive it now. Before it was Christy and I on the dream team. And now it's got 4 of us. And that's just extra energy to create from. That's how I'm just trying to perceive it all now. And just seeing how do I utilize everything to my advantage with the family. And then how do I use everything in this current context of what's going on in the world right now to our advantage? It's so easy to get upset. I don't know, for you guys listening right now, talking about this whole COVID pandemic, this whole idea that's going on around the world right now that's, it's definitely challenging my status quo in terms of how I consider leadership, in terms of how I consider governments, in terms of how I consider the medical system. And I'm fascinated by how compliant people are. That's what I'm very interested in. If people are connected, they might see a few different things, but I feel like people have got more connection to the television, aka the idiot box, than they have to themselves. I feel like people got more connection to which car they buy than, actually researching stuff around their kids. Even stories I heard just recently, parents will let the person that looks after their kid look after their kid, but they won't let them open up and close their car. That to me, I just look at the world sometimes and go, it's absolutely insane that you won't hand someone the car keys that they might potentially move and scratch, but you'll let them be a custodian of your kid. And that's what I'm looking at every day in myself. How many insane points of view do I have about everything? Why do I make certain assumptions about it?
Because we've all got them, right? We've all got those views that we obviously have adopted from other people, or that we've kind of grown up with thinking that is the truth, that we need to challenge on it. Like you said, on a daily basis or whenever it comes up.
Yeah, thinking about those things before we're on the podcast, before we're chatting, recorded, we're talking about schooling. And we assume that kids need to go to school. And we just assume that it makes their life easier. And we assume that it's hard if they don't go to school because mummy and daddy need the 6 hours alone because they can't deal with the fact that the kids are around too much because they have to go to work and there's so much going on and such a distraction, such a struggle. But this is true, and I'll find the fact later. I can text you later. The guy who actually invented schooling in America, guess where his kids went to school?
Well, they probably were homeschooled, right?
Correct. And it's just funny just to look at all your assumptions. Like, why do the kids go to school? Why do we go to work X amount of hours a week and structure our life in a particular way? And why do things take X amount of time? That's what I'm just trying to challenge myself every day to see where it goes.
I mean, that's a whole other rabbit hole to get into, but the whole schooling system hasn't really changed much since it's been invented, really. And the world has changed a lot around us. So there's lots of questions around how we are functioning out of that as well. I think that is one of the good things actually that has come out of COVID is the whole working from home and not having to be in a specific place. And so people do get a little bit more freedom around that. I think that is one of the things where organizations actually woke up and have been like, well, it can work like that as well. Before then, it wouldn't have even been an option, But yeah, I like that you're saying it's just kind of looking at things that we see as normal, so to speak, and challenging them, First of all, is it normal for yourself? And then I guess the second question is, does it work for yourself? Because even if it's normal, so to speak, normal for other people, and if it works for other people, it doesn't mean that it is necessarily the best option for you and your family.
Yeah, and it could be. My kids
exactly.
might...
Yeah, but just asking the question, I think it's about asking the questions. I think that's what I found, like people have forgotten to ask questions. People are just believing everything they hear without actually questioning it or thinking about it themselves because somebody else has told them that. Whoever that may be, it must be the right thing, But it's like, well, what about asking the questions and what about looking at it with a little bit more awareness and going like, well, what does that actually mean? Do I have the same opinion? Do I feel the same? Like, what about this, and that? And yeah, that's something that I found also lately, obviously, with what the world's going through, that people don't ask questions and don't necessarily see other viewpoints very well, because that doesn't mean that you need to change your viewpoint on things, but it's just about understanding that there is other viewpoints as well, right? And that's hard sometimes. I mean, I find myself in that situation where I'm going like, how the hell can they think like that? Or why can they not see this, But then you have to accept that that's their truth and that that's what they believe in, It's just the same way as I want them to understand me and be okay with the way that I think about things, So it's kind of it's one of the things where two things come together.
It's so important just to be able to listen and go, that's interesting. I think that's one of the best tools I've ever had that I learned. I think it was from a gentleman named Dr. Dane here from the Access Consciousness, and I find him fascinating. I'll tell you a quick story about how that book showed up in my existence, but it's just that tool that he had in that book is just everything's an interesting point of view. And he recommends for a year, you actually, every time you hear something that you say, because, we've got thoughts pinging off in our heads all the time. It's the nature of things. Sometimes you have these moments where you're just so at peace, but often that's the case. And it's just fascinating to go, everything's interesting. When you start to listen to those thoughts in your head, don't buy them as real. Don't think they're actually a belief system that's yours. Just go, oh, that's interesting that I think that. Imagine that for everything. You wake up and go, hey, I feel like a ham sandwich. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I feel like a ham sandwich. What do I actually feel like? Like, truthfully, what kind of food do I actually require right now? Trying to tune into our body, trying to tune into our awareness. The gentleman, though, that I actually learned that from was a guy named Dr. Dane. And Dr. Dane here, he wrote a book called Being You, Changing the World. And I thought it was super cool because I was at a monastery in Thailand. At this monastery, they had so many rules, which is obviously why it's such a special place. Because if it didn't have any of these rules, it'd be just an average, normal place. But then, from my experience there, I just had certain things that I wanted to do and how I wanted to experience things. And I skipped one of the meditations. I found a book. There's a longer version of the story than that. It was quite magical, but I just started reading this book. And it just made sense. that if we're just conscious in our lives and we start asking the correct questions, we can start to create a better quality of life. And I just started to look at all the experiences in my life, because people would ask me if I had something that would seem so hard for other people happen to me, how I could get back up on my feet so quickly. And that was the thing. It was just like, wonder what else could happen. You know, wouldn't it be cool if blah, 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 whatever I wanted to experience, then it seemed to happen a lot faster. But the quality I realized more and more is where we ask questions from. Because I think the questions most people are asking, why is this happening to me? Why is the world shutting down? Why do we all have to listen to this, blah, blah, blah? And then we just get ourselves stuck rather than going, how can I use this to my advantage? What else might be possible? And what's a scenario where everyone wins?
And so when you're saying where we ask questions from, what's the right place to ask those questions from? Because it is about being conscious around those things, right? But then how can we tap into that place of, asking the questions from the right place? Because it's the same thing around manifestation and everything, just kind of saying it out loud doesn't mean you're going to get delivered what you've ordered, so to speak.
Yeah,
so there is more behind it than just saying the sentence.
I'm really curious about what we are. Like, that's where I stay in that curiosity. Like, it's so easy to try and define ourselves. And if I look at, say I look at the New Age spiritual movement of today, to me it's just a rebrand of Christianity. Not that there's anything wrong with Christianity or New Age spirituality or anything, but it's just like we take the same idea, we put a different wrap on it. Kind of like if you look at, what's the game I was talking about the other day? Tiny houses. Tiny houses are caravans. Let's be honest, it's a tiny house. It's a freaking caravan, people. It's a fancy caravan. And it's the same idea, just a slightly different spin on it. Not that it's right or wrong, but it's just fun to go in terms of your life. Like, what's exactly the same that you're actually pretending that it's different? And then what is different? If you feel that you're a little bit different, because everyone does. Everyone feels like they're unique and everyone feels like they've got this quality. And so many people I've spoken to feel like no one gets them. Just a weird thing, Imagine that. You're just walking around your whole life going, no one gets me. And everyone's having that thought process going around. Everyone's knowing.
Why do you think that is, though? How can people feel like that people get them?
I don't know. My friend introduced me to eye gazing. I think that was one of the most profound things I've ever done. Actually, no, he didn't introduce me. Igor, I told you that Igor's a friend of mine in Sydney. He started a movement that's all about eye gazing. But my dad actually took me to an event where we did eye gazing. Imagine your father, and you're just looking, for all the guys listening, imagine your mother or your father, these people you had such a close relationship with, and you just looking at them in the eyes. Like, you got nowhere to go. It's the hardest thing for people to do in so many ways. Igor's thing is called the human connection movement. So if you want to try eye gazing, you can check that out there, particularly with someone you don't know.
I've done it with somebody I don't know at the workshop, and it was really quite interesting to see how much you get from a person by just looking into their eyes. You pick up on their energy, you pick up on their feelings, you pick up on their worries, on their happiness, whatever it may be. You really, if you look somebody in the eye for 5 minutes, you kind of know where that person is at. That was my experience at that point, And so, I think doing that with loved ones or even people that you do know can have very profound impact as well, because you suddenly might get that person in a different way as well, or see things that you might have not seen as obviously before.
I just feel like we've got all these ideas and expectations of people. Like, as I went down that thought process of eye gazing, I remember doing it with my dad. So I just imagine myself, this was me at 25, 26, going along to an event that he took me to. It was my first ever official personal development event. And it's called Humans Being More. And we turn up and we're there at this event called Humans Being More. You do a heap of goal setting, you do all that standard stuff. But the pivotal moment for me, there's a couple of them, but the main thing for me was this eye gazing. And then it was easy to eye gaze with strangers. Often people go on holidays, they feel a lot safer to express themselves. That context where all of a sudden they're on holidays and they can be anything because no one knows them. No one's got ideas or context to who they are and what they are and how they show up. But then on holidays, they feel free. And then with my dad, I'm going around the outside circle. He's coming around the other way on the inside circle. And we're just rotating from person to person. And as I started to get closer to my father, it started to get a little bit more uncomfortable. And I just remember looking into his eyes and he just started crying. This man that, you know, I've loved, I've hated, I've everything in between, because he's the most, you know, probably the most significant man in my life because he's my father. And that thing, it was so beautiful just to have that with him.
What do you think comes up for people during that moment?
I don't know what comes up for people. I can talk for myself, but, you know, for me, I just softened. I'm there just with my dad, and I saw his greatness, I saw his different elements, but then there was the surface level stuff. I feel like you start to see that, you know, how you said before, like you can see where people have insecurities and where they have greatness and all that sort of stuff. But once it goes deeper, there wasn't really a separation anymore. We were just in that moment. And that's the thing, like, you know, when we talk about flow, the whole idea of the conversation, everyone thinks when we're going mountain biking or jumping out of planes, you know, when they talk about flow state, everyone thinks it's all the adrenaline. That's how they talk it. The whole idea is adrenaline junkie. But it's not. It's that peace. Like when you're doing something that's beyond your expectation or capability, you can't think. You just have to be. And I feel like that's what the ice bath achieves for me. That's what the breathing achieves for me. The sauna, if I make it too hot, that's what it achieves for me. Love making, it's definitely another tool to get there. But even love making with breathing and eye gazing, just more depth. Not with my dad though.
Now it's getting interesting.
Not with my dad though. Just to make that one clear. But yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's also times when you feel alive, right? It's just the places that you go to and the things that you do where you actually feel alive when you're doing it. Where your soul finds something, where it can express itself. Like I talk to my brother a lot about that as well, because my brother is big into sports and he's really active, and he's just like, I just feel alive when I'm in the mountains, you know? I feel alive when I go skiing. I feel alive when I hike up a mountain, and he's constantly out and about. That's what really does it for him, you know? And I'm similar, that when I'm going on adventures and nature, it's like you said that before, it's such a profound impact on us. You just feel alive and you just feel like you can really recharge your whole being through just being in the presence of that.
Yeah, it definitely works. I just had an idea too for people. Something that I've been fascinated by recently is like the exponential abundance of nature. Like just an idea I want to drop in on for a second because it's interesting is, you know, when you see waterfalls and how they give into you, that's just all they do. And you see the trees, they're not judging you. I feel like that's why people like to take nature walks. A lot of people like to smoke in nature because that's their connection to themselves. And, you know, if you go into biohacking, there are benefits of nicotine. It's not all bad. All the other tar and the chemicals and stuff I wouldn't recommend. But yeah, it just gives people that, you know, silencing of the mind. But I've been fascinated lately with gardening. And I mean, we've just got 31.5 acres that we're about to explore, which is, everyone that I've seen, they're like, it's amazing. And they go, it's a lot of work. Well, it is, but what else are you going to do? I feel like we've got this idea that we're afraid to work. It's almost like we're in a context in this golden era of reality.
I don't think it's so much, sorry that I interrupted you there, but I don't think so much it's we're afraid to work. I think what it is as well is that work is always considered a bad thing.
Yeah.
But work can be fun.
Yeah.
You know, work, like if you're working in something that you actually enjoy and your passion is there, then like what do you want to do? Lie on the couch the whole day? Of course we're going to work. Of course we're going to do something, you know? But it's about finding something that you're passionate about, because then work doesn't become work. It's just your hobby, you know, that you're doing.
Which is interesting because I'm excited about it now. It'd be interesting to ask me again in 5 years' time. Like just to go, hey, how was all that work? Right now we've got to acquire a tractor. We've got to acquire a ride-on mower. But we turned up there on Sunday and we push mowed a massive section. We just did it with the normal mower because it needs to get done. And the stream I wanted to go on was like actually growing vegetables. I feel like that is a spiritual practice or a connective practice, to actually take the time to water plants and nurture them and actually see a seed turn into a fruit tree or turn into tomatoes. I'm just looking out, you know, because I can see all those cherry tomatoes I've got growing in the garden. That fascinates me. Like the imprint of that particular seed, and then the right nutrients and the right sunlight and the right water and everything around it, and it just becomes something And then when you eat it, when you've grown it, for me, it's wild. I remember a friend a while ago, she had a massive business. She was doing all things around the world. And when I go to catch up with her to go along to something, she goes, oh, I'm gardening. I'm like, what? She says, I'm gardening. Come around if you want. And it's just interesting what brings us peace. I guess that idea of slowing down to speed our life up, like just the nurturing of my garden every day gives me something.
Totally. Yeah, it's funny because, I mean, growing up in Austria, for me, that was always normal. You know, we always had a big veggie garden in the garden, veggie patch in the garden. And growing our own food was just something that was normal, you know. But yeah, I guess living in the city, it's just become less and less normal for people to do that, unfortunately. I generally find in Australia, it's not something that everybody does. Like in Austria, everybody does it, you know. Everybody grows their own food. So here it's a bit more like, where are all the gardens? I remember thinking, coming here, like, first of all, nobody has a freaking garden. Like everybody like puts the whole piece of land that they buy, there's a house on it, right? There's no space for even garden, which is insane in my opinion. But anyway, that's a whole different story. But so there's no space for a garden. And I'm like, why do people not grow their own veggies and herbs and food? It's like, yeah, it's funny. I mean, I get super excited when my plants get new leaves, you know? I'm like, yay, another leaf.
It's the best.
I've also got some tomato plants now on the balcony and, you know, with the boys, obviously showing them to nurture that. But anyway, where I wanted to go next with you, I guess, I want to come back to what you said before, you know, that becoming a father, obviously, has really changed you again. It has also challenged you. So I would like to go a little bit more into that and just hear your experience of what it's been like for you. And then maybe we can unpack that a little bit more around how it works, you know, how being in flow and how creating things for your life works with a family. You might have a few more obstacles in the way. It depends if you see them as obstacles or opportunities, you know. But yeah, how have you found it? Your kids are now, what, 4.5 and 11 months, your two little boys?
Yeah, so Taji's 4.5.
How has that journey been? Yeah.
5 in April. Yeah, 11 months for little Akaya. I don't know, let's talk about it. So, you know, before I started, I was in Europe. Before I knew I was going to be a dad, I was in Europe. Two of my really close friends encouraged me, positively peer pressured me to start a family. Ian Lochran and then my friend Jason Moran. So two of my really close friends. Ian I've been friends with for 42 years, which is quite remarkable. So since I was 1.5. And then Jason about 20 years. So two of my, you know, lifelong friends. And they go, I feel like it's time for you to start a family, mate. Both of them just said it with such certainty that it just seemed like, you know, it spoke to me at that time. And so I did. Soon after that, we conceived right away.
Was a family always something that you wanted previously to that? Or was it not something?
No. I don't know if I've spoken publicly about this, but I'd actually broken up previous relationships because I actually didn't want to have a family. And Christy knew when I got together with her that was the case. Just as long as you're comfortable, Christy, just so you know, I actually don't really want to have kids. I just feel like, you know, for my soul, for my experience here, it's actually a lot more practical to not have kids. For whatever reason, that was where I was at. And she goes, oh, okay, I want 4. But that's fine. and now we've got 2 kids. I could probably have more, but I think Christy's comfortable with 2. But it was hard to go from, you know, trying to have this awakening journey, this experience of life, trying to be more of myself. And I kind of got to this point doing this trip around the world, which I called the greatest love story ever told. Which it was just, you know, to use the word conscious and magical, we navigated it all with that inner knowing. I just choose things based on that was the correct choice. And the magic that showed up from that was remarkable. And then we conceived the first time we actually tried. Literally in Ischia, in Italy, drinking red wine, eating copious amount of figs, which are great for your fertility. It's apparently true. They look like balls. You know when you see figs? that's apparently, yeah. And so just eating, you know, 20, 30 figs a day and just having a beautiful time. And then, yeah, Christy and I, you know, we made out. And when we got back to Cairns, we kind of had an instinct. When we got back to Cairns after this big 4-month trip around the world, we went and got the test and we were pregnant.
How did you feel at that point?
I think I freaked out a bit. I feel like everyone kept talking to me about having a foundation because I'd been all flow. I wasn't worried about these things. I'm like, why do you got to go and do something for 20 years to get a result when you can just choose it and keep creating your life. That's the perspective I was coming from. And then because of that trip around the world and some of the people that I met, I was getting invited to some incredible projects to go along to. You know, jumping out of helicopters, driving Tesla cars, things like that, going on a trip to Africa with some thought leaders and things that I could have gone on, but I felt like it was important to be with Christy. And I was trying to actually, you know, that was sometimes I can use try and actually mean something. And sometimes trying is, it's never going to happen. Like say I try and jump off a waterfall, it's not going to happen. But if I commit to it, it's different. So I committed to figuring out how we're going to go from Cairns. I had the idea we needed to live on the Sunshine Coast. And that was a really strong sense from my perspective. Christy's best friend lives in Cairns and she didn't want to leave straight away. So I felt like in our relationship, we're sitting there going, we're focused in this direction, but we're also pulling this direction. That was challenging for sure. I remember working on a particular project with an online project. I'm sitting at a cafe working. And a friend Josie, who lives up in Cairns, she goes, Brock, that one's not for you. Whatever you're working on, go and jump off a waterfall, mate. Like, I love when you got people around you willing to call you out. Josie was incredible. And so it was a series of trying out different things and figuring out things and, you know, leading into running experiences, still doing some coaching, getting distracted, thinking I had the best business model ever. All of a sudden, I've got a great business partner who used to be my previous client, Chris Jackson. And we started an idea, global transformation experiences. We're doing events in Australia. We had events planned for South America. We did Bali, magic, miracles, you name it. I'm at the event. I'm looking at my phone, missing my son. This is when Taj just existed. People were having magic and miracles, but it was like I was doing it for them. I still got something, but as if I was putting my energy into something because I had to.
It didn't feel right at that point.
Yeah, just, you know, and I talk with transparency with the guys that were there. It was magical. I loved it. Flow state, you know, the things that we did. We turn up to the waterfall, which normally, the water temple, normally they're jam-packed. Normally it was raining all week. When we go out, it's not going to rain. It's going to be the perfect weather. That's what we chose. I chose that when we get there, we just have the whole place to ourselves. And so it was. And we chose that we'd actually just take people on this inner journey, but outwardly through Bali to experience the magic and miracles. And then it was epic. Like, I'm so glad I did it. We got to stay at this particular resort where Richard Branson and guys like that go and stay. Because at the same time Taj was about to be born, I got invited to go to Necker Island with my friend Ryan Nasser. He's invited me to go on a trip to Necker Island, meet Richard Branson, which is kind of a cool thing to do. And I was trying to convince myself, even though my inner knowing was not, that I couldn't go because Taj would be born around that time. I go, he's going to be born late. But I couldn't go. So I went, how can I do an event that's going to be of that same nature of going along to Necker Island, but I could do it on my terms. And that's how we ended up at that place. Then we did a Byron Bay one, and it was amazing. But from Christy's perspective, being there with Taj was horrible. I thought it was amazing. She thought it was different. So that's where I'm coming from now, going, how do I clearly communicate with my wife? Well, fiance, but I call her my wife. And how do I communicate clearly with myself? And how do I engage with my sons and then bring them into it? And then, because if we're all four of us on the same page, it's amazing what we can accomplish. Like when we all get dialed in and aligned, it's ridiculous what we can accomplish. And when we're not, my oh my, it's challenging. Taj is a beautiful boy, but you know, we're getting help. We're getting a counselor because it's hard for us. Trying to help him with his challenges and all the things that he's got going on and we've got going on with him. And then, you know, literally if something's not working, let's get help. Little Ikaya, I talk about their names too. Taj Phoenix Bowen and Ikaya Zen Bowen. I try to really put a lot of thought process into what I was going to call them, how we're going to approach that. It's different.
I love it. I think they're beautiful names. And they just suit them so well as well. When you see them, you're like, that's just the perfect name for them.
Man, the boys are awesome. With Taj the other day, I picked him up he goes to kindy 2 or 3 days a week. I picked him up, I took him to the organic shop, and I'm trying to help him make choices. So I'm sitting there going, hey Taj, I had this, and this I wanted to do this afternoon. Which order would you like to do it in? I want to go to the organic shop. I want to go get some climbing shoes and I want to take you for an adventure. So first we went to the organic shop. He gets to have a treat. Then we went for this adventure, and the simplicity of sliding down a dirt hill for half an hour was just righteous. You know, that when you just, that's just my son and I, and that's all we wanted to do. We could have stayed there all day. That's what I want more of. Like, that's what I'm inviting in, more of those experiences where I just love it.
So what's the main thing that you've learned through your children, you think, so far?
I call myself out on more things. Like, I'm really looking at that. There's one thing that Christy does, and we'll notice him that the kids are saying maybe a lot. And I went, where are they getting that from? It was from Christy. And I'm noticing certain things about myself. I just go, well, is that something I'm comfortable for my kids to copy? That's where I'm really looking at things, going, well, how do I have this awareness? Because I break a lot of rules. Like, that's part of my way of being. If a rule doesn't make sense, I'm happy to break it. And also as a parent, you know, kids are going to challenge certain things that you set particular rules and boundaries to try and make it so our life flows easier, you know, so everything's done in a correct order and sequence and they don't draw on the walls. And this morning was like clearing stuff off that Taj drew on the walls. You know, it's a challenge. I used to run events at the house with breath work and ice baths, and little Taj man put a skateboard into the side of a friend's head. And little Taj, love you, man. It's just interesting. He's just having fun. He doesn't realize that, you know, he was 3. The expectation we have on these little dudes to be perfect, and I see the opposite where kids are so, it's almost like they're so afraid that they just sit there and everyone goes, that's the perfect kid. Well, it's not the kid I definitely, you know, if that's how my kid was, sure. But learning patience, learning, you know, different morals, ethics, virtues, looking at having a family code where we're all just go, well, what's this legacy about that we're actually committed to in terms of the farm, in terms of us as a family, in terms of what do we want to do? Like, what is important to us? What do we not care about? When we're choosing stuff for the weekend, do we want to jam pack it so we're just fitting everything in on the weekend, or do we want to do nothing? And trying to have those conversations together. I mean, I want to get so much out of life. I just try and fit as much as I can in. But some days it's nice to block it out and have nothing.
You need that as well, right? To get your strength back and to really nurture yourself as well. But yeah, it's interesting with the little ones as well when you're talking about that, because I also find, like, sometimes I look at my kids and I'm like, oh my God, you are so hard to parent. But it's like all the things that I want them to have. Like, it's all the attributes that I'm like, this is going to be so awesome when you have that later on in your life. But I'm like, but Jesus, it's hard to parent, you know.
Correct.
And it's, yeah, like you said, they're just really pushing you to those limits and they're making you rethink things and ask those questions, you know, and see what's right for you and what's right for them. And it's really interesting as well when we're talking about flow, because I feel like kids are constantly in flow. You know, they just do whatever they want to do. And they're like here for 5 minutes and there for 10 minutes. And then they do this and do that. And they're just kind of going with what they're feeling and what's right for them at that point. And if they're hungry, they're hungry. And if they're not, they're not. And it doesn't matter if it's lunch or not. And I mean, I'm all for rules and regulations to a certain degree as well. Obviously, we all need that. Personally, I think that's healthy as well. But it's just really beautiful to just let them explore and let them be, you know. And it's something that you've always been very good with yourself. But I think that a lot of people struggle with in their adult life because they feel like they need to do this and they need to do that. And they don't have time to really express themselves and really express what they're actually passionate about, you know. So yeah, I think that's something that we definitely can learn from our kids as well. Be a bit more like your children, you know. Just give a little bit less F's, so to speak.
Less F's, less concerned about what other people think, for sure. I think I was talking to some of the men that are in my life the other day about that, how there's this whole journey of, you got to, you know, not give a stuff about what other people think at some point. But then that element where you go beyond that, then you start to be discerning, because I think sometimes we're so heady, so overthinking about what everyone else thinks, that we're not willing to make, you know, live in our truth or make our own decision. But then I'm also, from that perspective lately, in that softening, going, well, how do I be considerate as a leader, but also, you know, in my family or the people around me? Yeah, and then also, you know, that idea, like there's an idea that we tend to do. I was chatting to my mate about it because I actually I went away to a festival recently, had an amazing experience, but I just stuff was coming up for me a little bit. And I was chatting to my mate about it and just thinking about like this idea where we're all trying to take care of each other. You know that one? Like the assumption that someone cannot take care of themselves. Like we're all trying to look out for each other instead of like, I just go, how much energy does that waste? I mean, playing with that lately with Christy and I just go, well, what do we need to clearly communicate? Even I push the limits in terms of I want to go out mountain biking as much as I can. It's just a thing for me at the moment. And I go Sunday mornings and then once or twice during the week and then more if I can. Other than that, it's climbing mountains and kettlebells and whatever else I'm up to. But the mountain biking Sunday morning, it was awesome. Just like super, super great ride with my friend. I ride a Santa Cruz, which is this beautiful pink bike, and it's just the creme de la creme. So I'm so happy with it. And in a time when it's so hard to get mountain bikes, my friend Dan, who's a total Jedi, he was here on the Sunshine Coast. He goes, you're still looking for a bike, and he found it for me that day. Like that. I was just, thanks, man. So grateful, so thankful. But I had this ride with my friend Brad, and we're bombing hills, we're going off jumps, we're doing things. And I got to the end, I quickly looked at my phone, and Chris just texted me, calling me. And I just looked at it, I put my phone away because we just went and had a coffee. We had something to eat. Got home, Christy was a bit ruffled because she wanted me home at a particular time, had a particular expectation of me. I go, what do I need to do so this doesn't happen again? Like in terms of that, like not staying stuck back here, but going in terms of that flow, like what do I need to communicate so this doesn't happen again? Because if I think about Christy, she's got certain demands and needs that she has. And she wanted to know, because we hadn't clearly communicated what time we're going to the farm, she wanted to know what time I was going to be back. I didn't want to be distracted because I was in that zone, mountain biking, and then I caught up with my friend and we were talking about some cool projects. We just had the best conversation ever. When I got home, I was so relaxed, I was so present, I was so engaged. I quickly communicated with Christy. And all I did different is I go, what do you actually want? Like, what's important to you? What do you feel like when I'm out doing what I want that you're missing out on? Rather than having that conversation I used to, as a coach, have between couples, because I was either talking to the wife or the husband, all the expectations people have of each other, rather than just putting it on the table going, hey, this is important to me. I want to talk about it. And with Christy, it was she wants to go swimming and she wants to go riding her bike more. So all I did next is I went, Monday, I've got a meeting at 9:00. Let's go swimming then. I'll stack it. I'm going to actually walk with the baby. He's going to go to sleep and I'm going to listen on my headphones. So then I had this beautiful time where I'm on my meeting. I've got the baby there. Christy's swimming. Then we went for something together after. So that's what I mean about flow, is like how many things we stack together. Because even while I'm on this, we're not using video, but I'll show you, Sylvia, is that right now I've got matcha green tea with a couple other things in there. That just does certain things to your brainwaves. I've got filtered water. That's going to do certain things to you. The breathing that we do, that's going to do certain things. Like how we engage in our physiology, that's going to do certain things. But I feel like more and more is carving out space, whatever that means to us, and finding what that is. I can't define it for you. I can give you clues, and I know what it is for me right now, and that changes. Sometimes the things that are absolutely important to me, they flip, and I don't want to do them at all. That's the strangest thing ever. You see some people that just want to mountain bike for 50 years. I used to mountain bike for a while, then I stopped, and I love it again. I'm just in love. It's interesting.
I used to mountain bike a lot when I was, still back in Austria. When I was in my teenage years, I used to love it.
Yeah, certain things. I like that question though. What makes you come alive?
Yeah. Do more of what makes you come alive, right?
It just works. Even I went back in Sydney. This is before I met you, Sylvia. I used to work in recruitment. And the cool thing about recruitment is all you're basically doing is you're seeing this energy over here, called a human being, but they call it a candidate. And then a prospect, we use all these like serious words about it, a human being or an energy or an entity or a prospect or a candidate. And we need to place that with someone else over here. So you're just getting these two energies, they need to match. And if they match, you place them in that position, they last long term and you get paid more. That's why I found recruitment really easily, because I just go, scan through the energy and I just notice certain people. I go, they'd be perfect for that role and they'd fit. And it was, it's kind of a matter of selling it to the candidate, selling it to the client. But I found that super easy. But then I went from recruitment where I made X amount of dollars into working for Swiss Vitamins. Do you know that health food company?
Yeah.
And all I noticed was different about Swiss is everyone was working so hard, not smart. They were pushing themselves. If they turned up for a meeting, imagine you turn up for a meeting and you're exhausted. Imagine you turn up for a meeting and you're the guy in the room that's so exhausted, they're just over it. They don't want to be at work, but they have to be at work. And then you got to have a meeting with that person. Like that's how my brain thinks when I think about the workplace.
It's not set up for great outcomes, isn't it?
It's not, but if I just did it, that's what I'm going to encourage you to do too soon, Sylvia. Go to the Blue Mountains, jump in a waterfall there because that's extra crispy cold.
I'm not allowed to leave my 5-kilometer radius at
Oh,
the moment.
is that
but
still
soon
game?
I will be.
Is that still game on?
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So to be honest, I'm not even looking at rules and regulations anymore because I've just given up a long time ago. I'm just trying to live my life as I want and as normally as I can. But yeah, the 5 kilometers, I think that's still something that exists. So, but I do spend a lot of time on the harbor and, in the little pockets that we've got around of nature. So that's been okay, actually. I almost feel like I've spent more time in nature through that because I go and find those places where there's not as many people and, hang out with the boys.
So, I mean, the point I was going to make with Swiss was if I went to the Blue Mountains and I was energized, I would turn up and people want to see me because that energy is infectious. That's what I was dialing into. But then also, if you start to go in terms of that 5 kilometer rule, is that a great rule or is that a silly rule? Only you can answer that.
It's the worst rule. It's like, what the hell? Yes, doing. But yeah.
And I always think about that with awareness. I would go, is this rule actually is it effective or is it a silly rule? And when we had some certain times when we weren't supposed to drive around, well, I just tuned in and I went to where I felt to go. That's all I did. I can only speak for myself. When the police did turn up at one particular place I was at, being a waterfall, I just left. That's it. And I just had the awareness to leave, so I left. And as I drove out through another way, the police went down. They were checking. They were issuing up to $15,000 fines. To me, that's insanity. In Bondi, the fact that you've got helicopters stopping people from going out there, getting clean air, sunlight, to me, that's insanity. I go, if the world's flipped upside down, well, just do your thing.
That's what I've been doing, trying to be honest. I've been trying very hard for myself and also for the kids. I think that's been a big driver for me, keeping life as normal as possible for them, or like as awesome as possible for them, I guess.
Yeah, of course.
And
I dare you to go to the Blue Mountains. There you go.
I might go on the weekend. I actually do feel like just immersing myself in nature and just going for a big nature walk. It's been something I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks now. I'm like, we really need to get out and do something like that again. So, yeah.
There's just those ideas going, what's the worst that can happen? And what's the best that can happen? I'm also trying to ask it from the perspective of, is this actually going to hurt anyone? By you choosing to go to the Blue Mountains, is it going to cause any damage to any other human being? And for me, it definitely doesn't.
No, not really. Yeah. No, that's really interesting. And so while we're talking about that, the question is, it is obviously very challenging and taxing times for a lot of people right now all over the world, really. I guess you've answered it to a degree already, but how can people connect to themselves a little bit more and be more in flow and live the life that they want to live still while all this craziness is kind of going on around them? How can you stay calm and collect that and, live from a place of ease during those times?
It's interesting to answer that because I'm on the Sunshine Coast and we haven't really had much happen here, to be fair. I've chosen what I do as in terms of my business right now, I'm allowed to move around. So I've got that golden ticket. Whereas some people are not. They have to work from home. And I know that's been very mentally challenging for people with regards to having kids at home. And particularly if they're in a small apartment and they've got no backyard, it's hard. And I can't really speak to that. I'll try. But it's kind of the same when I used to coach mums. They used to ask me for different things. I go, I'll give you some ideas to try, but I don't know. I'll explore it. I mean, there's examples of people that are so Jedi, the monks, and they can just sit there and be in absolute bliss, even if they're sitting in a sewer. I'm not quite there yet. I need the environment. Like for me, there's certain things that really work for me. Had I been in Melbourne, could I be as positive and happy as I am now? I can't answer that. But I see some guys with similar personality to me, how they struggled. The main thing for me is I don't follow silly rules.
I like that. I like that as a rule.
Try not to come from being antagonistic and try not to come from that resistance, just going, hey, doesn't make sense. To lock people in their home when there's this idea going around, they haven't even shown the existence of a virus, so that's a whole rabbit hole. But, just all these tests, all these different things, all this false science, for me, it's just going and looking at the assumptions we've made about what's going on. And for me, not having a fear around it, And then I guess get inspired by certain people that they trust their immune system. And for some people, they feel it's important to speak out. I know for Christy, she gets on Instagram a lot. For me, I don't like to. Every now and then. It's not fun for me. I'd rather be out living than having my video on at the same time. If you do, get in the garden. If you do, find a meditation practice. There's plenty of apps you can do. Another thing too is just controlling your breathing. Because everything, when people get anxious or have a stressful time, everyone tells them to take a big deep breath. Yeah? But what you actually need to do is take a big deep breath out. It's just an interesting one. Everyone's like, and take this big deep breath. Yeah, but then you got to let it out. You can change your state. I guess the other thing I encourage people to do is, read a book. Phone a friend. But I would not worry about the rules. I would not worry about the consequences. I'll be walking out and I would actually be inspiring other people to do the same. If I was in Melbourne at this particular time, because Melbourne was a crazy lockdown, I'd probably be on video. If I had to, I'd be willing to get arrested. No worries. Cool, arrest me. Come on. No, just with those silly rules. And the funny thing is, if you're willing to be arrested, no real issue. It doesn't seem to happen. And I don't know, the idea that I play in is calling the police the awareness police. This is something I played with a little while ago. Well, the awareness police exist in consciousness because a lot of people are choosing unconsciously. They need to be controlled. They need to have rules. If we could actually all be a little bit more sovereign and a little bit more engaged in actually being kind, caring, and conscious of our whole planet, it might be a different scenario. And the thing that challenges me the most is you've got the army, you've got the police all sitting there going, I don't want to be doing this, but I have to do this because I need the money. And the people that are at home working there is like, I don't want to do this, but I have to do this because I need the money. And the people going and getting the jab going, some of them do genuinely want it. They think it's going to protect them. Fantastic. And maybe it does. And maybe it doesn't. That's up to, other people to see it. 20 years time, we'll have the full answers. But looking at that perspective is just going, how do we ultimately choose what's important to us? That's what I always come back to. They have to choose it.
Brock, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on here today and have this conversation with you. We could talk forever, and I'm sure we'll find another space to talk. Maybe next time I'll be on your farm up on the Sunshine Coast and we can do one in person. How good would that be? Let's create that one.
Beautiful.
To summarize our conversation today, there's 3 main pieces of wisdom really that came out for me today. And one of them is that you're just a master in always challenging yourself. Just always challenge yourself, always ask questions, always say, is this the life that I want to live? Do I need to create something different? Creating space for that, creating space for the life that you want to live and see where it goes and just playing with it, and asking different questions, seeing what comes up, changing questions around and just seeing what happens and just being really in the flow of life. So I really loved that. The second point that came up was that just listening. I think listening is something that people have sometimes forgotten to do as well. There's a lot of talking, there's not a lot of listening, but it's listening to your environment and to what's happening around you, but then also listening to yourself. What is it that you really want to create and what is it that you're really after? So just really find the ways that you can do that, start to meditate, start like Brock to do ice baths, whatever it may be, but just try and listen to yourself and try and connect to your true self. And the third thing that I really loved, and I think this is my favorite as well, when you said, it was really challenging for you to have a family at the beginning, because lots of things change, obviously, but then you changed your mindset around and you said, rather than having 2 people on the dream team, now we've got 4, and it's not so much, oh my God, I need to look after my kids and it's so much work, but it's like, how can they help us create all of this that we want, and how are they part of this, and how can we get them involved? And I think that's such a beautiful way to look at having kids as well. How can you make it easy? How can you make it playful? How can you get closer to them and they get closer to you, but just being open to that? I think that's really beautiful. I just really love that. So if people want to get in touch with Brock, you can find him on Instagram under I am Brocky B. I love it. It sounds like a rapper name or something. I am Brocky B. So yeah, find him on Instagram, put it out into the universe, say, hey Brocky, I'll see you soon, and it will happen. He will come into your life, I promise. He does those things. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. I really hope you got something out of this episode today. There was a lot of wisdom from Brock in their life experience and lots of little tips of how you can live more in flow and how you can trust yourself and trust your instincts and really connect to your soul and flow through life. Please do share the podcast with your family, with your friends, or anything that you think might benefit from this information, or for anything that you think might want to try it out and, create magic for themselves. So I really hope this episode brought some sunshine to your soul. I'm sending love and light your way, and until next time.